You remember how Biden had said that Putin can't remain in power, and he said that in March 26th of 2022. Remember he said that, and then oh my God, they said that was a gaffe. They had to walk it back.
Right.
They walked it back, and then they walked it back. Keep still walking it back. March 27th, and then all of a sudden, on April, like no, we're back. Turns out he meant it. That they need regime change, and it's not a gaffe. And now the reason why I'm telling you this is because Canada, this is from March 10th. Regime change in Moscow, definitely the goal, Joly says, as Canada bans Russian steel and aluminum imports. Canada's politicians don't want to recognize that the current Russian policy is supported by the ultimate majority of the nation, Russia's ambassador countered. Canada is banning the import of Russian steel and aluminum as part of its sanctions regime as Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly raises the possibility of regime change in Moscow. That's Ben Mankiewicz's mother's maiden name, by the way. Joly made the remarks at a Friday press conference where she discussed the importance of maintaining a diplomatic presence in Moscow. Regime change. Regime change. Can you imagine if Putin was demanding Biden be taken? You got to get rid of Biden. Can you imagine that? You got to get. We're not getting out of Ukraine until you get rid of Biden. Can you imagine that?
Well, here's what I can imagine: all the people rallying around Biden, even if they don't like Biden, because you're not going to tell us who can.
Right, that's right. So that will just make people rally around Putin even more.
Why do people think that this works? Sanctions or any of that nonsense?
I don't know. We're able to see how much we're isolating the Russian regime right now. You're not. You're losing. Russia is expanding, more powerful than before the war. Russia's more powerful than before the war. We're able to see how much we're isolating the Russian regime right now because we need to do so economically, politically, and diplomatically. And what are the impacts also on society and how? So this is just them, the hegemons, the imperialists. This is all they have to cling to. They have to put an economic hurt on Russia, economic hurt on China, so they can keep hegemony. But that's not working.
It's amazing how they always sound like some unbelievably failing corporation, and they just blather the same PR we remain committed to a something and this and a something, and they won't address any reality going on.
By the way, your big idea to put a hurt on Russia, it's not working. Russia's economy is forecast to grow faster than Germany's and Britain's, okay?
Well, is he at least dying of cancer like they said?
Joly said regime change is indeed the point of sanctions and pursuing accountability. So the whole point of sanctions is to somehow you think you're going to overthrow Putin.
How does it work? You sanction
you cause so much pain for regular people. Maybe people die because they can't get medicine or food, stuff like that.
And then they go, hey, you know what? America's right. I will, in my weakened condition, overthrow my own government.
The goal is definitely to do that.
Accountability, I just noticed, by the way. You know how we're not going to be trying him for any of those war crimes because we can't? Canada, and you'll go along with that when we tell you you're not going along with it?
The goal is definitely to do that. It's to weaken Russia's ability to launch very difficult attacks against Ukraine. We want also to make sure Putin and his enablers are held to account. Well, they're not going to be. Who's going to hold account the Nazis in Ukraine?
His enabler. You're his enablers, by the way.
That's right,
moron.
I always make the difference between the regime and the people of a given country, which is fundamental.
Well, not if you're doing sanctions.
Sanctions are hurting the people, not the rulers of the country. And that's fundamental. Russia's trade with Canada plummeted over the first 10 months of Moscow's invasion of Ukraine a year ago, with a 78% drop in exports from the same period 1 year prior. Ottawa's economic measures already bar the export of everything from forklifts to barber chairs unless Canadian businesses convinced the Liberal cabinet to issue exemptions.
Oh, I remember this. The amount of companies that had exemptions when all the sanctions
they all had it.
Yeah.
It was like Italian leather handbags. We got to get an exemption for that.
Yeah.
While the latest move sends a strong message that Canada, is not done imposing sanctions on Russia, the commercial impacts of the steel and aluminum ban will be quite muted, meaning they won't do anything. Why? A lot of the imports from Russia plummeted over the course of the last year, so now banning these projects in practice is not going to have that big of an impact.
Oh, that's why they're doing it.
That's right.
It's a nice symbolic nonsense thing that isn't anything.
There are people, I was at dinner, and there are people, grown-up people in their 50s, who think that Russia's losing the war. Or Putin's getting his ass kicked. That's what he said.
Oh, yeah, on YouTube, there's a whole bunch of like channels that I don't believe them because they have nothing but videos about how Russia's losing the war, and they all get like 150,000 views an episode, and I don't believe any of them are. I don't believe a single one of them. Who would be on YouTube that interested of like nothing but all Russia is bad all day? Yeah, I don't know anybody. Even people who are like
besides Keith Olbermann and Cenk Uygur.
So that's two people. That's two viewers.
Sam Harris.
You're still not getting up to 150,000 people. Even people would say, well, Putin can't just invade a sovereign nation. They're not watching that. Like, it's the most AstroTurf nonsense thing. Of course they believe that shit.
Go to jimmydore.com to see my new stand-up special, COVID Lies Are Funny. For only $10, you get to become a premium member, too. And come see us do our live shows. We're going to be doing stand-up comedy in Milwaukee, Nashville, Honolulu, Los Angeles, Northampton, Massachusetts, Syracuse, New York, Cohoes, New York, Hartford, Connecticut, Baltimore, Maryland, and more. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets.